I know housing costs have gotten really expensive, so I want to share my little housing hack for how I ended up with a beautiful home for just $60 a month. I know it looks sketchy. The original plan was for this to just be the little summer camp for my son and I in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. As you've already seen, it's a pretty rough looking 50-year-old abandoned single wide mobile home. It was in really bad shape, and I was able to purchase it for $24,000. And there were so many reasons why people would be concerned about this. One was a lot of informal ownership changes over the years. So what I did was hire an attorney and paid her $1,500 to make sure there were no other liens against the property. There were some concerns about federal tax liens, but it was all clear, and that was money well spent. As you can see in the video, the place was completely filled with junk. Most people thought I should pull this old trailer off and rebuild something new and beautiful, but I actually couldn't even afford to do that, so that really wasn't an option. I also wanted to keep my property taxes really low. This trailer was sitting on blocks, and I knew that I could upgrade it as much as I want and still keep that tax status. But the problems were pretty serious. The roof had been leaking. You can see the ceiling tiles coming down. But I knew that the original structure was actually really good, built with steel beams and 2x4s. This was a 1970s construction. It had copper wiring. One of the other issues was pest infestation. We'd even had some raccoons in there, which actually can be a health hazard, but also chipmunks and squirrels and mice. I was told that there had been some squatters living here without any electricity or water, that they were pooping in buckets in the bathroom. So I think that's what I found here. This little blue pot, as well as this other bucket in the back corner. So whenever you're buying old homes, beware of the buckets. This back bedroom was really in the worst shape. It had the worst leaking. It smelled really bad, like mildew, also filled with junk like all of the other rooms. I think water had just been pouring out of that ceiling onto that mattress. Everything in here was just wet or damp and mildewy, moldy, and just stunk. So I never intended to do a video. Every video is just something I found, usually something I was sending to a contractor, so please forgive the poor quality of everything. Even the belly board underneath was falling off. I think that's where the critters were getting in. But the views were what sold me on this property. There were sunsets over the bay every night, so I decided to get started. So step one was trying to get the power on. I knew that it had been on previously, but the meter had been pulled, and I was told by the village that they had pulled the meter because the squatters were jumping the meter. So now this was considered new service, and everything needed to be brought up to code, and plugging your house in was no longer code. So I called every electrician I could find within 2 hours, and I could not get anybody to come out. So I had to give up on getting electric, and then we got into the pandemic, and I got lucky because I found a contractor who was willing to come out to my property even though it was very far away because it was vacant. So he used generators and he put on a new roof as well as leveled my trailer. I was able to haul all of that wet trash out of the back bedroom, and he hauled that off for me for just $150. Then he started demo on that back room for $325. He took everything all the way down to metal, painted everything with kills, and put in new insulation and boards and tongue and groove pine ceilings, and that also included that hallway, which had also leaked. The windows in that back bedroom were also completely trashed, but I didn't have the money to fix them yet. So our next step was cleaning and getting everything out of the trailer. We just basically emptied the whole thing and cleaned and disinfected and painted a little bit, just every surface we could, trying to get it so it wasn't so gross. For trash haul this time, I ordered a dumpster and pretty quickly learned that it wasn't just my roof that had been leaking. But we continued to enjoy the absolutely sacred and beautiful land here. After 2 years, I finally started calling electricians and saying, just name a number. I will pay you anything to bring electric out to my property. I ended up getting it for $2,300. Literally within days of me calling for inspection, I noticed the transformer had been pulled from my property. I called the village and they said that there was no longer electric because it was an abandoned trailer and that I would need to pay several $1,000s to bring it back out. They finally agreed that there had been a mix-up, and so after 4 years of owning this trailer, this is the man coming to turn on my power. Getting electricity meant I could get internet, which also meant that I could now work full-time from this property as I work online. My next big goal was running water, as I'd been purchasing drinking water as well as hauling water to flush that 5-gallon toilet. The first big problem was that dirt had run under this trailer over the last 50 years. The trailer was almost sitting on the dirt at this point, and all the pipes were under there. They were all leaking, and we couldn't even access them. So the next big project was getting me dug out. Had some excavation going, but towards the back of that trailer, it was hand digging. After I got all that done, I still had to pay to have it lifted, and I think that was another $1,000. I found a guy that I paid to pull out my old hot water heater and install a new one. But I could not get a plumber to come replumb my trailer, so I called a well guy and said, can we just get this pressure tank going? Of course, that all needed to be replaced, but we ended up just using hoses, which felt like a miracle to actually have something running so I could fill my toilet as well as wash my dishes. But the water seemed kind of brown, so I purchased a new water filtration system. My son was just loving living here every evening on these long summer days with campfires and sunsets and playing with his friends.
Save us, hounds!
We'd been cooking a lot of our meals outside, but I do love to cook, so was really looking forward to getting my kitchen functional, so installed a propane range and got a new refrigerator in 2021. It was so nice to be able to cook, and it started to feel really cozy as we could have meals watching the sunset. My room still felt like a fort because I hadn't had the money to finish it out yet. We were usually just hitting the thrift stores and kind of sticking with the 70s theme. This is my little boy's room and his puppy. We didn't have any climate control, and that metal trailer could get pretty hot in the summer, so here's a more realistic sense of what some of our aesthetics were as we tried to stay cool. But the front part of the trailer started to feel a little cozy. I sealed up all those windows, which do need to be replaced, and did a little bit of wall repair. In 2023, I finally found a fabulous contractor who had a great crew. They put on a deck and then plumbed my whole trailer. It was, of course, a whack-a-mole, and he had to replace a lot of fixtures. But then the following spring, started to work on my little fort bedroom by putting up some wallboard, replacing that window, and trimming everything out. When I came back in the spring, my new contractor was having a hard time getting water pressure on my tank, and so he started digging and finding one leak after another at every connection, all the way from the well pump to my trailer, which explains why my water was kind of brown. After he got every leak repaired, of course, the 50-year-old well pump failed, so he dug that up and replaced it. We finally have clean running water, and it feels like a miracle.
I'm your #1 fan.
So I decided to replace that old toilet with a low water toilet, and then got super excited that I could install a washer and dryer, only to discover I didn't actually have a dryer plug and needed to pay $300 for that. But finally got those installed, and I felt like a real mom. My son was now begging me to live here full time, so we started thinking about what it would take to stay through the winter. The winters get super cold, so step one was purchasing and installing a furnace. That also required that I get my propane guy out and getting me a bigger tank. We also put 1-inch foam board all around the perimeter, and then I got some free slab wood to hold that up and finished up those steps. We replaced some of our furniture, mostly with stuff that we found in other people's garages, but it was mostly thrifting and keeping with that 70s theme. Thanksgiving came, and I was able to make food in my beautiful kitchen, but my son got sick of the 70s theme and asked me if I would let him redo his room. So I put a little oil-based primer on the paneling, and we went to Walmart, and this is how he fixed it up. He likes to do it the way he wants. His room is super tiny, so I set up a little computer gaming station in his closet. We'd never seen this property in the winter, and we were just loving the winter sunsets. But it continued to get colder, and I continued to have trouble with these windows. I had plastic over some of them, but you can see there's ice on the inside of these windows. My next wish list item is to replace all of the windows. But I really had no idea how cold and how bad it was about to get.
So I think it's like 30 below, and my pipes are frozen. So I'm about to crawl underneath the trailer and see if I can get some heat on those pipes. Not sure if that's gonna work.
So different parts of my pipes actually froze 3 separate times. We got 2 of those heat taped. They were kind of at vulnerable spots. But as this was a summer camp, this was the last part that froze. And it's a spot that he had to blowtorch and dig. And we're going to have to redig that up in the spring and redo it. But as much as we loved this place in the summer, we just could not believe the magic of winter. The stillness and the beauty and the serenity was unlike anything we had ever experienced. Having made it through some of the coldest weather, I realized I actually have a completely functional full-time house. My son's friends are coming over and playing, and I realized I haven't spent that much. So I wanted to go over the numbers. My original purchase price was $24,000 for the almost 7 acres and the trailer. As I went through all of my numbers, I realized over the last 7 years I had spent about $36,000 on improvements, meaning I had about $60,000 into this project. The thing is, I'd been paying that as I went along, so I don't have a payment. All I pay now are my property taxes, which are $60 a month. I still have a wish list, but I'm going to put a link in the description that connects to my spreadsheet that shows all of my numbers of what I've done and what I still hope to do. Now, a lot of my friends and family do make fun of me for living in this ugly old trailer, but I sincerely feel like I have cracked the code. My child is so happy. We are living in absolute paradise. I barely have to work because I only pay $60 a month for my housing. It gives me such a sense of security. I mean, he could even build his house on this property in the future, so it provides him a sense of housing security. So I wanted to make this video in case you are thinking about doing something crazy, like buying a piece of land and throwing an old shed on it, or living in a tent until you can build the place. I swear it works. We're happy and you will be happy. We do not need to be house poor.